we turn away about 98%. We turn away most owners.
Today, I'm very excited to be here with Melissa. She's the co-founder and partner at Manitou Life.
I started out my career early on. I worked for a very large national property management company, and they had a huge portfolio of apartment communities.
Let's talk about that intentionality of being created. Why did you decide to purposely build your business in such a way?
We, over the years with our travels, have stayed in many vacation rentals, and we saw that the experience was inconsistent. What was marketed and promoted was not what you actually received when you arrived.
You have a unique view on what it means to care about the details.
We take the approach that they're coming into a home that is extremely well staged. These details are to the nth degree, checked each and every time. Business is hard. It's meant to be hard.
It's hard to say no to owners when you're starting out and you're eager to grow the business. How have you managed to keep yourself in check to make sure that you are willing to say no to those homeowners? Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality, and where we bring together leaders, operators, founders, investors, entrepreneurs in the vacation rental and hospitality space so that they can tell us more about their backgrounds, the lessons that they have learned along the way, as well as perhaps some of the mistakes that they have made along the way, so we don't have to make those same mistakes ourselves. Today, I'm very excited to be here with Melissa. She's the co-founder and partner at Manitou Life. Thank you so much,
Hi.
Melissa, for taking the time. Before we get into it, could you let us know where you're taking the call from, please?
Well, today I'm in Colorado, but my business is actually based in northern Michigan, in the Leelanau Peninsula, specifically north of Traverse City, Michigan. But we do business in both Michigan and Colorado, but predominantly headquartered in the northwest corner of lower Michigan. So if
Absolutely.
you know the
Thank you.
Mitten, right, it's the lower part. Yes.
Okay. Amazing, Melissa. So, Melissa, before we get into the background, the story, and everything that we have to learn from your experiences, if you had to start your career and your journey again from scratch, and you knew everything that you know today, what, if anything, would you do differently? And perhaps what is one mistake that you would avoid or tackle in a different way?
Hmm. One mistake.
If there's one
Right.
thing that you can do differently, yes, exactly.
That's right. One thing that I could do differently. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that I would get started earlier in
Mm,
terms of investing in uh, either long-term rental or short-term rental properties. I would get started earlier versus I I had the opportunity to do so and I didn't. So the first mistake would be having an interest in it and not getting out of the gate. Get going
mm,
and find out which market you're interested in investing in, not just near term, but long term. And then I think the second mistake that's very glaring to me is really embrace technology from the start, whatever those tools may be that you need to get started. I'm not a very technical person. I don't typically embrace technology. I'm sort of technically averse. So I would say that it's very important to embrace the technologies that are available to you. And that doesn't mean to invest a whole bunch of money, but to find what those tools are that you need to make your systems run in your business, whether you have two properties or 200 or 2,000.
hmm Very good points. Very good points. And just to dig a little deeper there, in terms of the technology piece, I find that there's this is a common theme in the sense that this industry, because of its nature, right? Hospitality, human service, attracts a lot of talent and people that you know don't necessarily have that technological background. Yet, to your point, it's a core fundamental element to succeeding
Right.
as well as the hospitality side. So, how have you managed to still, in a way, keep up, and in a way also, leverage the technology that's out there as a non-technical, so to speak, hospitality professional?
Right. Well, I think that you have to always be open to learning about what the emerging technologies are, because there's always something, as you've referenced, there's always something new coming into play, whether it's direct booking or how you're managing your housekeeping resources or how you're restocking a property. And
Hmm.
it seems that there's always someone pinging me in asking to connect, to share whatever their tools are that could help make our business more efficient, more productive. So I would say that first and foremost, zero in on the technology platforms related to booking. I mean, listen, nothing happens unless the property is booked. So you have to understand how those booking platforms work. Maybe
Hmm.
not all of them work for you because of how their terms and conditions are structured or the types of
Hmm.
properties that you're representing. But I feel that there are some properties that we work with that don't want to be on a booking platform. We're okay with that. But you need to understand how the booking platforms work. That's an important technology element of what drives the whole experience, the whole discovery process. And so I think that's very important. Number two would be the resources. How are you managing your partners, your housekeeping resources, your other subcontractors that support maintaining the property? Because there is maintenance and property services that come along with that. So, what tools are you using to communicate with them, to manage the service process, get them paid, measure performance, surveying? How did they do? Did they do all the things that were tasked to do on the checklist? So, that's an important tool. And then, of course, financial management. What types of tools are you using to manage the financial equation, the accounting reconciliation, including taxes, which seems to be something that's elusive at any given time. You have some
Hmm.
booking platforms that are managing some of the accounting elements, but not all of them for you. You have some that are really not managing any. They are collecting the money and then distributing the funds. So I think that that's a very important. Probably put that in the top. Put the financial management in the top
Hmm. Okay.
tools.
Very, very good points. Before we go, into the story and how you got into the space and the timeline of your career, um, can you give us a quick overview of what Manitou Life is all about?
Sure. Thank you for asking me. So, the word Manitou is actually a French word, and we see it in Colorado, we see it in Michigan, we see it in Canada. And the word itself means spirit within. You know, what is the spirit within you, the energy within you that drives you? And so, being in the Leelanau, on the Leelanau Peninsula, and being looking out at the Manitou Islands, I named the business Manitou Life or Manitou Portfolio because it is all about the experience. So it really started with the name of the company in terms of branding. And I started out my career early on. I worked for a very large national property management company in just suburban Detroit, a company called Village Green Property Management. And they had a huge portfolio of apartment communities. And like in any real estate ebb and flow, there were times when the properties had high occupancy and there are times when properties had low occupancy. And so we developed a furnished short-term rental model. I did with the owner of the company called Village Suites. And that's really how I got started. And then I was managing properties on the side in San Francisco I and in Tahoe, and realized that we would be buying property in northern Michigan, but we weren't going to be spending most of the year there. So I started renting out the property, and then homeowners and vacationers came to me and said, "Can you help us manage our property? Can you help us find and buy and manage a vacation rental? We live in California, we live in New York, we live in Arizona, we live in Florida. We're only going to be here 8, maybe if we're lucky, 10 weeks a year, and we need somebody to manage that for us." And so that's how it really grew and took root. And from the beginning, which you and I have discussed, the intent was to keep it a very niche, very very unique network of properties. So I refer to our business as Manitou Life Portfolio because we help we help clients buy, sell, invest in real estate, but we have a very, very closely curated portfolio of properties that make up the vacation rental, the short-term rental element of our business.
Hmm.
So,
Let's talk about that intentionality of being curated, being boutique, and in contrast to where you originally got exposed to this space, which was in a national, larger, management company.
right.
Why did you decide to purposely build your business in such a way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, there are big vacation rental businesses out there, right? And big could be anything from 30 properties or more up to thousands of properties. And certainly, we, over the years with our travels, have stayed in many vacation rentals from, and mostly ski destinations, but all over California, all over the West. Um, and we saw that the experience was inconsistent. And what I mean by inconsistent is that what was marketed and promoted was not what you actually received when you arrived. Although
Hmm.
I'm sure intentions were good in the marketing message, they were not the result or the experience once we arrived. And I would say that that continues to happen, particularly the larger the portfolio, the more challenging it is for those businesses to have a consistent representation of the product every single time, meaning what you're sold is what you actually get when you arrive in terms of
Hmm.
cleanliness, the quality of the interiors, the quality of the accessories, the quality of the kitchen materials, the stocking of the inventory, supplies. From the moment you arrive outside the property until you're in the property experiencing it, it is an experience. And so I have stories a mile long of arriving in the middle of the night after traveling with children and luggage and skis and things, and the lights don't work. There's a foot of snow on the front porch, and these are high caliber, high end properties. And so that was a message to me that there is an opportunity to have a consistent experience from the moment the guest arrives in the driveway. And a guest might not arrive and say, "Hey, the driveway is clear and it's plowed and the yard is has been refreshed and staged and prepared and so on and so on." It's a subconscious experience, and so my intent was to curate a portfolio that in which we could provide that consistency each and every time, so that not only were they receiving what they were marketed and what they were paying for, but we exceeded their expectations.
Hmm.
And that's our goal. I don't think that we hit that mark every single time, but that was the intent from the beginning, was to be purposefully consistent at a very high level with the details. And
Hmm.
some of the reviews start off with, it's the cleanest property we've ever stayed in. Why is that important? And it's important because, heck, I've stayed in a Four Seasons, a Montage Resort, wonderful high end properties, and the rooms needed housekeeping. So it's a consistency that is important when you're trying to maintain a very high level of outcome when the guest arrives.
Hmm.
And that was our intent from the start. So,
Yeah, no, and you talked about the details, right? And you have a unique view on what it means to care about the details, because I guess it's a word that people can use a lot and just say, "Oh, details matter." But what exactly are the details? Can you give us a sense
oh
on
yeah,
your unique
there's so
perspective?
many. There's
Hmm.
so many, but I think the first one that always comes to mind for me, I would say the top three. The first is, well, I'm going to start with, let's just use a kitchen, right? We all have stayed in rental properties, and most people that set up a rental property, in my opinion, and I've stayed in many around the world, is that they say, these people aren't here to cook. They need a couple of dishes, and they need a couple of glasses, and they need just enough flatware for the number of occupants. Well, that's not the approach that we've taken. And that's not the approach that our owners take, because they're in our portfolio. We take the approach that they're coming into a home that is extremely well staged, as if it's their own home for 2 nights, 3 nights a week, a month.
Hmm.
And it is extremely well equipped, extremely well appointed. And if it doesn't have something that they need because they're going to be preparing meals or having someone come in and cook and prepare,
Hmm.
we will provide that for them. And what is provided and stocked in a property is very high quality. The inventories are checked each and every time so that when the guests sit down and have a meal, they're not sitting down and saying, well, the table is for 12, but we really only have place settings for 9.5.
Hmm.
These details are to the nth degree. And does it matter when you're on vacation? Can people tolerate some missing items in a property? Sure, maybe one time, but our goal is to be consistent, that the experience is thought through every single time. When they're staying in the property, all the inventory has been checked, not just the beginning of a season or the end of a season or the beginning of a stay or the end of a long stay. It's checked each and every time so that the quality of the inventory is as marketed, and that if something needs to be replaced, it is replaced. If
Hmm.
something needs to be changed out and improved, it is changed out. Our guests are very important in that experience, in that we don't catch everything, but we try to catch most everything. And so guests will tell us, uh, we noted this, maybe you didn't note it between stays. And so we're constantly working on that, constantly trying to get that level of detail right each and every time. So
Hmm. Yeah,
that's
and tell me something, because there's two sides to this, right? One is you want to be very selective with the homeowners, right, that you bring on, because if they don't share those same standards, um, then it will be very hard to enforce those standards. And then there's
right,
actually internally on your end, like the team that you build to deliver your
right.
service has to also share
Absolutely.
those standards. So can you tell us a little bit about the challenges and what your approach has been to successfully curate both homeowners as well as team members that share those standards?
Yes, that's a great question. That is part of keeping a portfolio that is aligned with our standards, in that we try to do the best we can on the front end when owners come to us and say, express an interest in working with us, that we try to be very clear about our top 5 priorities to ensure that the property is a good fit for our portfolio. And I would say that we turn away about 98% uh, or more. I don't know, have an exact number on it yet, but we turn away most owners because during that assessment process, it's pretty clear that they're okay with things the way they are. They're okay if, let's just say, a carpet has been stained and they don't see it anymore, right? They're
Hmm.
okay with the inventory as it is. They're okay using, just giving you crazy examples, but a grill that maybe hasn't been cleaned in a couple of years, and it needs to be removed and replaced. These are little details that matter, and during the assessment process, we can tell this is not well aligned for our portfolio. There's also an experience that some owners go through where they get excited about staging. Particularly if they bought a property as an investment, they get excited about staging and preparing, and they're excited about the design process
Hmm.
and the inventory setup and buying new things. But there's so much more to managing a hospitality stay than just the decor. So we will oftentimes say, you should do that for yourself, but that's not a fit for our portfolio, because this is about consistency in all of the inventory, the entire experience. You mentioned about resources. That's also important. That is constantly in a state of process improvement all the time. It's
Hmm.
never perfect. That is the goal. We are perfectly imperfect, but we hold a very high standard. And I go through a very detailed, very engaged interviewing process with resources that work with our business, because they're representing our brand. They're not full time employees of our company. And so it's really about a synergy of, do we share those standards? Do we share those um, intention around service and servicing not just the owner, but servicing the guest? And how consistent can they be each and every time? And it is a constant process of training and engagement, and we learn from them. They hopefully learn something from us, but our objective is to constantly maintain that very high standard, which is difficult to do. It's something you constantly have to work at. You cannot sit back on your heels and say, well, we got it right most of the time this season, or at this property we're pretty good.
Hmm.
You have to constantly be working with those partners and those resources, and do it in a way that makes them part of the team, that they want to be part of the team, that they're recognized for the good work that they do, but also made aware of things that come up that guests have noticed that maybe they didn't catch. I know owners sometimes get frustrated when, if they're particularly for a property that's not an investment property only, and they're coming and using the property, and they'll discover things as well. And so it's a give and take, working with the owners, working with the third party resources, trying to get it right. Um, so
Hmm.
my
Yeah,
role, I'm the quarterback of high standards.
well, it has to be the case, right? It has to come from the top. Otherwise, yeah, that's what people will see as acceptable. uh,
Mhm.
so turning down 98% or more of people that are interested in coming your way, I want to touch on that a little bit, because I oftentimes hear operators get to that point after they've grown, and then they've realized the mistake that comes from accepting anyone. But
Sure.
rarely do I hear that be the approach from the get-go, simply because it's hard, right? It's hard
Right.
to say no to owners when you're starting out and you're
Absolutely.
eager to grow the business. So
Yes.
you have this duality internally of, like, you want to grow the business, but at the same time you know that this is not a right fit.
For
How
sure.
have you managed to keep yourself on check to
Yes.
make sure that you are willing to say no to those homeowners? And has that even been difficult for you
Very
personally?
difficult.
Hmm.
Yes, very, very difficult because, look, we all know this, this, all the people in this industry and other industries know that business is hard. It's meant to be hard. It's not
Hmm.
easy. And if managing and renting property were so easy, everybody would be doing it. And it's a hard business. And having been in it for decades, my part of my job is to take that litmus test, if you will, with owners to see, what their threshold is for this type of a business.
Hmm.
And that's my job, is to help them discover, is this something that they really want to do? Have they thought through maybe 10 other things or 20 other things that are involved, even though we're managing the service side and managing the rentals and taking care of a large majority of the business for them. It's our job to also help them think it through. So I guess in a way, if you take that 98%, just using that round number, how many of those are owners that we meet with that come to us with an intent, and then we go through a discovery process and we help them discover this may not be what we want to do? I would say
Hmm.
that's about half, right?
Hmm.
About half. We help them realize there's a lot of heavy lift here. There's a lot that needs to be done to prepare this property, and we're not really interested in that right now. And then I would say the other half, people that we say are not well aligned with us, are that's very hard to do because it's business. You're turning away business, and that's an opportunity. And I dyed in the wool salesperson, business developer my entire career. So I was never taught to turn away business. I was always taught to take all of the business. Abundance is good.
Hmm.
And so that's very hard for me to do. But I also have learned what works to help our business maintain our high standard, maintain our efficiencies, maintain our focus so that we're not getting pulled in many different directions.
Hmm.
And that there are people that will come to us that I can tell should probably be doing it themselves, They don't really want to work with a third party. They might want to learn what we've learned and what we've accrued over decades of experience, and then they want to learn it in a year or 2 years. That's not a good fit for us either. So several different scenarios, but I would say most of the time, out of that 98%, about half is helping people discover if this is really a business that they want to be in. And the other
Mhm.
half is discovering how aligned are those owners with our standards and processes, and will we make a good team in managing this experience for them and the guests.
Mm.
So
Yeah, and I want to insist just on this for one more second, just because you made a very good point, which is your background is it's been a lot of business development and growth oriented roles, so
right,
it's kind of like the very opposite of that in terms of turning down so much business,
that's
and
right.
so you know how do you internally like convince yourself that this is better, like you're better off letting go of this business and not accepting this client, because I guess the upside of you doing that has to be greater than the downside of
That's
that
right.
potential business that you're losing. So
That's right.
is that something that you have to kind of continuously remind yourself of every time you're having these conversations, or it's so ingrained in you at this point that
No,
the
no,
first red
never.
flag you see, you already know, okay, let's just not.
No, I want to work with everybody.
Mm,
And I remember many years ago when I first was in the real estate and interiors industry, I think I've shared with you, I worked for two Michigan-based furniture manufacturers, Hayworth and Herman Miller, now Herman Miller Knoll. Um, and when you work for these big companies and you carry massive quotas, everybody's a customer.
mm,
Everyone is a customer, and you look at it that way. I mean, and you there's always an opportunity to try to be of service and to help others. And I think that that's who I am innately, but I don't want to do a disservice to a potential owner partner by bringing them into our portfolio and then having them be let down and disappointed and discover that they're not well aligned with
mhm,
our standards. It doesn't mean that we won't give them some tools to go out and use and get them started, but they're not a good fit for us. So it's always a struggle for me because I want to help everyone.
mhm,
I really do. I want everyone to succeed. I want there to be abundance. I'd like everybody to be a great fit for our
mhm,
portfolio. So what it comes back to is that I am very engaged in the business. I'm very engaged with the owners. I'm very engaged with the guests. Whether they refer to me as a concierge or not, we're extremely high touch. And to maintain that level of engagement takes time, energy, effort, focus.
mhm,
And so you can't give that level of engagement each and every time if you're trying to please everyone that is not a fit for your
mhm,
portfolio. So I have had to really self assess and will continue to do so with each owner partner as to how we are aligned. Is there an opportunity to get there? Even at the first engagement, there might be some indicators that this might not be a good fit for the portfolio, but after some dialogue and engagement, can we get to that place where we've provided some education, some subject matter expertise that helps them understand what it's really going to take to
mhm.
get into the short-term rental business.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, and I think it comes down to your point, being part of not just the acquisition side of the business, but also the delivery side of the
Yes,
business, right? When you're just sales, like in the example of when you were working
right,
with the big companies doing business
right.
development and whatnot, you're in a way, yeah, you're not seeing all the details of the back end that will happen in the delivery. Whereas
That's right.
now, as a business owner, CEO, especially with those standards, you see both, right?
That's
So
right.
so that's interesting because I guess unless you have visibility and true understanding of both sides. Like, yes, the expectations, and yes, wanting to help, and yes, wanting to work with as many people as possible and wanting to grow, but also like, hey, there's capacity, right? And
Yes.
there's only so many properties that we can handle at this level of quality. Therefore, it's kind of like you inevitably force yourself to be selective. and
Yes,
and
that's
let's
right.
let's talk a little bit more about the talent side, the team side,
Hmm.
because it's hard enough to find people in this industry. I cannot
Right.
imagine how much harder it can be to find people that share that extreme level of standard. So, what exactly have you found that has been beneficial for you in terms of finding that kind of talent?
Oh gosh. Well, of course, I come from the hiring management side, right? I've been a hiring leader. I've had to recruit and manage talent almost over the entire breadth of my
Mm,
career. So I had a recruiting business that was in the construction, design, architecture, real estate business. So I understand talent recruitment, but there are always unique dynamics of recruitment by market when you're in the short-term rental industry. In the bigger markets, you're competing for the share of resources that are there,
mm,
right? You might have you can name all the major markets, doesn't matter. You're competing for resources. In the smaller markets or the more seasonal and rural markets, take the Grand Traverse area in northern Michigan and the Leelanau Peninsula, it's really an island, right? And so you have this very intense demand during this narrow window of time
mm,
for the same resources. And you see it in the construction industry. I mean, cost for construction is somewhere between six to 700 um, per square foot to build right now. That's pretty high when you look at the national average. So it's very hard to get resources. So in recruiting, what I try to do is, first of all, meet with people in person, take them to a couple of properties, spend time with them, show them what I mean versus just telling them what I mean. And
mm,
also, you can spell it out in checklists. I've heard that so many times. Give me your checklist. Give me your checklist. Give me your checklist. Anybody can create a checklist and download a checklist online. They don't need my checklist to do that.
mm,
And by the way, a checklist is unique to the property because every property is different. They're not the same. So I spend time with the people that I have screened out during the talent recruitment process or the resource recruitment process. And then I spend time with them at the property, showing them real examples, having them share examples with me about what their expectations are, what their needs are, what makes for a streamlined, efficient, highly functional turnover and service environment for them. And I have a colleague who's in my market, and they have quite a few more properties than we do, and they geocached all of their properties so that they could know when the housekeeping crews arrived and departed. Right? They don't want to be calling and texting and saying, "Have you arrived at the property?"
mhm,
They just want to make sure that they've I feel as though you're sort of already doing that if you're setting a standard that this is the window of time that you have to do this task, these tasks. You're already setting that standard and expectation. So in recruiting, it's setting the bar of what our standards are. It's meeting with people in person, talent, resources, partners, face to face,
mhm,
spending time with them in the field at the properties. There is some training often involved because they come from a different environment. We're working with a service partner right now who worked on a military base for 17 years and managed the fast food operations, the stores on these military bases. And so they know facilities and cleaning and turnover and standards, but this is a hospitality experience, a high end hotel stay experience. It's a little bit different. So there's training involved with resources that we're working with in our team. And I would say that another part of what I find important is that I work with them. I am their support team, uh, literally and physically. If things come up that you can't think of, and if they need help, it's either myself or another immediate member of the team that comes to their rescue and makes sure that they have that backup. And owners don't see that; they don't see that level of care and investment in time. Um, and so I think that's important for resources to know that things come up, people get sick, they can't show up, or they have car trouble or whatever it might be. How are you going to manage that?
Mm.
Do you have a we have a core pre-qualified crew, pre-recruited crew that are from different entities that communicate with each other, supported by us, right? So they're sharing and communicating, although they're separate entities, supported by us and the resources that we provide to them. So hopefully I answered your question about
You
recruiting.
definitely did. I mean, it's interesting. You gave a very, a couple of very good points, and then, you just pointed something else out, which is, owners don't see all of that work that happens behind the
Well,
scenes, yet it's important in a way for them to understand, because otherwise there might be misunderstandings, wrong expectations, right? There might be complaints. So how have you approached that education, so to speak, of homeowners, in terms of letting them know what it actually takes once you're actually working with them? Like, you vetted them, you
mm,
you thought they were aligned, but then on an ongoing basis,
mm,
letting them know what it actually takes to
mm.
deliver on this high standard quality
Wow,
promise.
that's such a great question and sort of a great observation, right? In that I would say that Um, again, in most business situations, you're hired to provide a service to your client, and not all clients want to understand how you get from point A to point B to point C and so on. Just, I hired you to do this. We went through the assessment process. I trust that you know what you're doing. You have the
Hmm.
skill sets and you've presented as such. I'm comfortable with that. I don't need you to spell it all out for me. What
Hmm.
you do or how you do it, just go get it done. Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I am keenly in tune with that perspective of I don't want to know. Every once in a while, you get a very uh, uh, detail oriented, particular, um, and even controlling. All of us have some. We'd like to be in control, right? If you're running a business, and they want to be in control and they want to know every single step. Have you done this? Have you done that? Have you checked this? Have you done that? And these are folks that are part of the portfolio that we convert generally to a referral only, because they should be doing it themselves if they're not entrusting us to hold those standards high consistently every single time, right?
Hmm.
So we do a review at the beginning of the peak season, April May timeframe, and then ideally, if owners um, are interested and eager to understand how it's things are being managed and engaged, we'll do another review sometime in the October November timeframe and go through the successes, go through the results, share with them some of the observations that our service providers have shared with us, so they get a full report of how we're doing and how we're managing those services. And we'll get a
Hmm.
sense from them of what's important to them and what's not important, what they don't want to know about. They don't want to know that you took the grill apart and cleaned every piece of a gas grill that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in 5 years, right? They
Hmm.
do not want to know. They just want to know that it's been handled. So we have to be in tune with our owners to understand what their needs, interests, expectations are. Um, and I was in a property recently over the holiday, and one of my clients who's buying real estate in the area came up to look at a piece that they're in, a piece of land they're in the process of buying, and they happened to stay not at my encouragement, but they happened to stay at a rental property that we used to manage the rental services for, the hospitality services for. And they said, we'd like you to come over and meet with us here. And I came into the property, and I just was, I couldn't help myself. I said, all these details. The light fixtures were full of dead bugs. There were stains on these beautiful rugs. There was the welcome documentation had wine all over. I mean, these are things that would never meet our level of service ever. And this client who's was happened to be renting, they knew this, and they said, we knew you would notice the details right away, but we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to look at it or talk about it because, yes, it's not what we expected. And then this is my client, my buyer, called the next morning and said, the water heater is broken. It's 17 degrees outside and we need to take showers. I'm not managing this property, right? And so I'm able to go back in time and see a property after we had it all set up, had it well prepared, had systems in place, had resources trained, ready to go. And we decided to part ways with this owner because they were not aligned in terms of our expectations of consistency and delivering the product, delivering the outcome that the guest was anticipating with their booking. And so we said, no harm, no foul. But it was an opportunity for me to go
Hmm.
back to the property and see how the details went from here quickly to here. And what a disappointment. And so I share that with you because you asked the question, how do you engage owners? How do you have the owners become part of the partnership and maintain that as well? It can be difficult sometimes because although they come in with good intentions and they think of high quality as, I drive a nice car, I like nice things. I appreciate a quality experience when I go on vacation. That
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily translate to how the property is presented and maintained for guests, paying guests that are coming in and staying in the property and experiencing every element of the property.
Yeah, exactly. Or they think that high quality is a one-time thing, right? That
That's right.
as long as you spend a lot of money on the initial
Yes,
furniture and in the initial
that
staging of the property, that it's just gonna stay as such. And this is a perfect
that's
example
right.
of how a property that was you know at a certain level, if it's just left to its own devices,
That's right.
the downward spiral is relatively fast.
Yes, it is. Yes, and this goes back to that example of okay, so you're an investor, but you also like to design houses, and I think that I think the spouse actually is a designer and interior designer, and they were very obsessed with the bar, having a very fancy bar, having nice um, bar accessories, and not just glassware, but full bar. And I, of course, we like a nice bar. Don't get me wrong, a nice bar is great, but you also have to know who you're marketing to, and it might change by guest. And so you can't just leave the bar out every time with wine openers that have knives on them and crystal decanters and things out when you have toddlers running around. I thought it was so ironic at this particular property see this full bar with crystal decanters and wine openers with the knives open, and then a basket of baby stuffed animals and things right next to the bar. So, a part of our job is to make sure that the property, again, it gets back to, is recalibrated and prepared for the guest,
Hmm.
of guests that's coming in. You could have two couples. They could be coming for wine tasting. The property is prepared accordingly. You certainly might want to have a nice bar service for them. And you've done that research in advance to understand who the guest is, why they're coming, what they're interested in. And so it's, it's a, It's an interesting element that you point out about maintaining that level of detail with the owners. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, Melissa, can you tell me a little bit about how you try to decide where you spend your time? Because there's
mm,
so many areas that you could be spending time on with owners, with guests, with
right,
vendors. Looking at
right,
procedures with your team internally. So, how do
right.
you think through where your time is best invested, and how has that evolved throughout
Yeah,
your
it's
your
always
career?
evolving because I think, by human nature, we all have things that we naturally gravitate towards, things that we're
Hmm.
comfortable with, things that we have experience in and that come easy to us. And then
Hmm.
we have other things in business that we don't gravitate towards that are not our natural inclination or natural interest. For me, I'm a front end business developer, sales professional, engage out in the field with customers. I'm a licensed real estate professional, so we work on the buy, sell, and invest side as well. So in the field a lot. The things that I'm not so inclined with are certainly the technical side. Luckily, I have a really good technical resource on our team, but the technical side and the accounting side. And spending time in those areas is super important. Without them, you don't have a business. So
Hmm.
I have to a certain degree, force myself to spend more time on those things. And luckily, our business has a cadence to it in that you've got some time that after October, I call it the slack in the line
Hmm.
between November and really the middle of April, when we have an opportunity to focus on those things that I'm not so inclined to lean into, the
Hmm.
technical things and research that. And so that's a balance. I think by the cadence of the industry, I'm given the opportunity and sort of forced to focus on the things that are not my innate strength and skill set and sort of embedded in my DNA. So
Hmm.
that's how I try to go about it. Yesterday I was on the Michigan Short Term Rental Alliance 2025 Outlook call, and I'll tell you what, during the month of April through October, I would really not take the time to spend an hour and a half to almost 2 full hours on a forecasting call. I just wouldn't feel that I had um, the attention span or the luxury of
Hmm.
spending that time. But it's January. It's January 8th. So I had the opportunity to do so. And there were 250 other short-term rental or people at least interested in the short-term rental industry in the state of Michigan on that call. So what a great way to connect with other people and spend time networking, which when do we get a chance to do that? Um, so it's a bit of a balancing act throughout the cycle of the fiscal calendar, right? From January through
Hmm.
December. Yeah,
That's interesting. Yeah, that idea of in a way forcing yourself, or the seasonality forcing you into taking time to look into things that you would have not normally taken the time to look into. That
that's right.
that's an interesting perspective. Melissa, it has been a pleasure to have you on. I could keep you here for hours because believe me, it's been very very insightful. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time, and I look forward to continuing to see your progress in terms of the
Thank you,
business. And
Sebastian.
it was really fun to have you on. So thanks so much for taking the time
Thank
and
you
for all
so
the
much.
insights.
I'm so grateful for you including me. Truly,
All
what a
right,
delight.
thank you, Melissa,
Take care.
for your time. Have a good one.
Bye bye.